So anyway, this presentation is about EMPs and what one strategy is, or a couple of them actually, to protect some of your items. Electromagnetic pulse, you probably know that. Dangers and prevention.
A panel of experts at the Universal Peace Federation has now issued a warning on the growing threat of EMP, or electromagnetic pulse weapons. Such an attack can knock out virtually all communications and other critical services of countries in a matter of minutes. For long, experts have warned that key electrical infrastructure in the United States remains particularly vulnerable to an electromagnetic pulse attack, or EMP, likely to be orchestrated by China, North Korea, or even Russia. The Universal Peace Federation specialists have now said that the US is at a pivotal moment if it wants to avoid a potential doomsday scenario. But to analyze the risk, we must first understand what an EMP is and how it can be weaponized. An EMP weapon is one that directs a massive explosion of energy over an intended target, much like lightning. But in contrast to other conventional weapons, an EMP explosion does not physically harm humans. What it does, though, is cripple all electronic devices and infrastructure within its radius. The weapon at first is glided directly above an intended target. These weapons, according to the US nomenclature, are classified as high-altitude electromagnetic pulse, or HEMP. A HEMP attack can interfere with radio frequency and instantly produce damaging voltage in electronic devices across thousands of miles. It can hinder fuel distribution, transport, food and water supply, and most importantly, communications, especially military communications.
I'm going to, I can't see that standing up, so I'm going to sit down and so I can read the screen. Newt Gingrich, when he was running for president, was ringing alarm bells of what the experts in electromagnetic pulse, or EMP, were poorly understood at the time. The idea is that a nuclear weapon lofted by a missile were detonated in outer space high above the American heartland. It would set off a huge and crippling shockwave of electricity. Mr. Gingrich warns that it would fry electrical circuits from coast to coast, knocking out computers, electrical power, and cell phones. Everything from cars to hospitals would be knocked out. There was a book written by William Forstner, which became a movie. It's an interesting movie if you're interested. It's called 1 Second After. And it was a fictional story about EMP and the impact on this community. And when they, have any of you seen the movie?
I read the book.
You read the book?
Yeah.
Well, when they made the movie, they made it in that town.
Really?
That's in the book. And the people in the community were the actors. It was pretty cool. Anyway, Forbes magazine at one time said North Korea EMP attack would cause massive U.S. starvation. And by the way, they have threatened to do EMP. North Korea has verbally said we would do it. Congressional report. A new congressional report contends that North Korea electromagnetic pulse attack on the U.S. would ultimately wipe out 90% of the population. The way that would happen is that if all electronics didn't work, then water pumps wouldn't work, refrigeration wouldn't work, everything wouldn't work that has microelectronics. So people wouldn't be killed, 90% of the population, due to the EMP. It'd be the result of not having the microelectronics. The hospitals wouldn't work, your water pumps wouldn't work, you know, all that kind of stuff. And it would happen within probably 6 months, they figure, if it actually did. Now the problem with it, the concept of EMP is we don't know for sure. And we'll talk about that a little bit, but in modern times, when we've been so dependent on electronics, we haven't had an EMP. But we do have some historical times when there was a telephone system and things like that, that we have a hint of how this could be. Forbes magazine says consequences of such detonation would be dire. The U.S. can sustain a population of 320 million people only because of modern technology, says Pry. An EMP that blocks out the electrical grid for a year would decimate the critical infrastructure necessary to support such a large population. In 3 days, the food supply in the local grocery store would be consumed. In 30 days, the national food supply in regional warehouses would begin to spoil. In 1 year, he contends that up to 90% of the population would perish from starvation, disease, and social collapse. We used to spend the winters in Arizona, in Mesa. One day my wife went to Sprouts, which was kind of like Trader Joe's kind of store, and health food, stuff like that. And they have a big produce section, and she went there to buy groceries, and there wasn't a single thing in the produce aisle section. And she asked the guy, well, "What's the deal? How come you don't have any produce?" He says, "Well, the truck didn't come today." So imagine if the trucks never come. It wouldn't take very long to not have enough food or anything like that. This is the EMP Faraday cage presentation.
Cool.
Forbes magazine said China has first strike capability to melt the U.S. power grid with electromagnetic pulse. The EMP Task Force on National and Homeland Security issued a scary report on China's ability to conduct an EMP pulse attack on the United States. The key takeaway, according to Dr. Peter Pry, Executive Director of the task force, is that China now has a super EMP weapon known to protect itself against an EMP attack, and has developed protocols to conduct a first strike attack. So in other words, the Chinese, North Korean, Russians have all threatened to do EMP. And so this is a very real threat, and it will happen silently. It will happen without warning. Unlike a solar flare coming from the sun, we have like 8 hours maybe warning if they tell us. But an EMP, there's no warning. It doesn't make a sound. It doesn't hurt humans. It just happens. Forbes magazine, first strike capability to melt the U.S. power grid with electromagnetic pulse weapon. China used stolen U.S. technology. Are we surprised to develop at least 3 types of high-tech weapons to attack the electrical grid, and key technologies that could cause a surprise Pearl Harbor attack that would produce a deadly blackout for the entire country? Dr. Pry outlines how China has built a network of satellites, high-speed missiles, and super electronic pulse weapons that could melt down the electrical grid, fry critical communications, and even take out the ability of our aircraft carrier groups to respond. By the way, I did some research about, because I've been looking into nuclear, what would happen if there was a nuclear attack. And guess where the highest amount of nuclear weapons are stored in the United States?
Washington.
Washington State.
Let me tell you, right across the harbor from
Bangor. Bangor.
Bangor has a bunch, but they actually store them on Indian Island.
Do they?
Where's Bangor?
There's a canal that goes between the subs come in and get
It's like it's northwest of Seattle on the east side of the peninsula. That's where the nuclear subs.
Immediately close to me.
The only plus side to it is most of those subs are out around the world. So even though they carry maybe 15 nuclear bombs apiece that they can detonate from anywhere, they're not all sitting at Bangor. So even though Bangor has the most, to say nothing about Hanford and all those other places, but they're out. They may have 1 or 2. You maybe know more than I do, but 1 or 2 docked at a time to refuel or whatever.
Is Coopville still?
Huh?
Coopville and
Coopville?
Whidbey Island? Is that
Yes,
still
it is.
operated?
It's kind of like right across the water, maybe 15 miles away.
Wonderful.
Literally grocery store in Coopville.
Washington Free
When
Beacon
it happens.
had an article, China, Russia building super EMP bombs for blackout warfare. Commission to assess the threat to the United States from an EMP attack for the first time reveals details of how an EMP weapon are integrated into military doctrines of China, Russia, North Korea, and Iran. Nuclear EMP attack is part of the military doctrines, plans, and exercises of Russia, China, North Korea, and Iran for a revolutionary new way of warfare against military forces and critical civilian critical infrastructures by cyber sabotage and EMP, the report says. This way of warfare is called many things by many nations. In Russia, China, and Iran, it's called the 6th generation warfare, non-contract warfare, electronic warfare, total information warfare, and cyber warfare.
Total information.
Huh?
Did you say total information?
Did I misread it?
No, I just say total information. Yeah, because 5G, or I mean, 5th generation warfare is information warfare.
Yeah.
So 6 is
Yep.
total.
Yeah, good point. Nuclear electronic warfare is also called blackout war because its effects in the electronic devices. EMP attacks will be carried out at such high altitude they will produce no blast and other immediate effects harmful to humans. Instead, 3 types of EMP waves in seconds damage electronics, and strikes are regarded by adversaries as not an act of nuclear war. Did you catch that? So if China or Iran did an EMP, they don't consider it an act of war, even though it's going to take out our military, it's going to take out our way of life, and just basically cripple us. And they don't think it's a war effort. But every country that's our enemy, an EMP is their first thing in the war games. Because think about when we went into Iraq, whoever that was, went into Iraq, the first thing they did, as I understand, they took those stealth bombers, which nobody had seen before. They flew, nobody detected them. Then they did smart bombs, went right down the vent pipe in their control center and blew it up. Before they even blinked, they didn't even know it was happening, and all of a sudden they couldn't talk to each other because it blew up their communication. And this is way worse. This is taking out all of it. Did you have a comment?
Well, I don't know. You mentioned EMPs about these other countries, and believe me, the U.S. government has equal, if not better, EMP warfare in their works than any other country has.
They do, but if China does first strike, then they might be crippled. We are not in a defensible position if there's an EMP.
Sounds like nobody is.
Our grid is so wide open to an EMP killing it.
Absolutely, yes. I
Yeah.
agree. Yeah.
But yeah.
I'm just saying that.
We're on an offensive, we're in good shape, but it's not the American
But again,
way
for
to be
me,
the
it's
first
like
strike.
all of the superpowers
Right.
are in the same position.
Right,
How can I control the world?
right.
You know, and
Put-
we're right there with them.
Yes, absolutely.
But your government has to have the will to protect you, which our government doesn't.
No, I'm not saying any government has. I mean, I don't know if Russian government has the will to protect them. I mean,
Yeah, I think they have.
I don't know. I don't know that.
I think the powers that be on any of those countries are just thinking of themselves.
Yes. Yeah.
The article continues, super EMP bombs produce gamma rays that are generated a peak EMP field of 200,000 volts per meter. Enough to fry strategic communications and intelligence systems. China, Russia, and probably North Korea are said to have these arms, according to the commission. The United States has no super EMP weapons in its nuclear arsenal. This is not a current article. They probably now do. The weapons can be delivered through a variety of means, including satellites, long to medium range missiles, short range missiles launched from a freighter, from some cruise missiles or anti-ship missiles, from jets or commercial jetliner or meteorological balloon, which of course we just saw one of those. Makes you wonder. National Geographic did a thing on EMPs, Electronic Armageddon, if you want to look that one up. So now let's think back for a minute. 100 years ago, what was it like? You can see from this picture, if you can see the picture, there's one of those windmills that pump the water out of the ground without electricity, but next to that in the picture is electrical generating windmills. So our methods of using things have changed dramatically. We're so dependent on electricity, it's not even funny. You just think about anything that you have that's electronic. If you didn't have it, how would your life change? It would just absolutely just be terrifying. Now, besides an EMP, you can have a solar flare from the sun. I talked about that a second ago. And there actually was one really recently. But the Carrington event is a famous one from 1859. Amateur astronomer Richard Carrington ascended into the private observatory attached to his country estate outside of London. After cranking up the dome's shutter to reveal the clear blue sky, he pointed its brass telescope towards the sun and began to sketch a cluster of enormous dark spots that freckled its surface. Suddenly, Carrington spotted what was described as two patches of intensely bright and white light erupting from the sunspots. 5 minutes later, the fireballs vanished, but within hours their impact was felt on the globe. So if our Carrington event is from the sun and not an EMP, we do have a little bit of warning, and the government's watching, and I would believe that they would do their best to communicate. But so what? What if it's 8 hours? And then, you know, probably what happens, and we've had them recently, is the aircraft communication would blink, our satellite, our GPS. It wouldn't hurt us, it wouldn't take down the grid, but it would interrupt life at a smaller scale, but we do have some warning. Yes?
The dimming of the sun, right? The
Yeah.
effort, is it linked into that somehow to prevent the solar effects, or that's not?
It's totally natural, and there's nothing we can do about it.
There are
Yeah, no, I
cycles,
know,
there
but the
are-
dimming of the sun, that's like
Bill Gates' program of dimming the sun.
Yeah, right.
Like,
I know
Right.
is that like trying to
Well,
prevent this? I mean, it's
I
a
don't-
joke.
I
but-
don't, I don't
think it's
trust Bill Gates, so I
making,
doubt that's his
humans weak
motivation.
because
So,
then they don't get
a
fired.
website that does a
Okay,
great
yeah,
job
okay.
every day
I was
showing you the
wondering.
weather on the sun
Wondering.
every day, every morning.
Wondering
Yeah.
behind
And they have
we are
great
not there.
YouTube videos about climate change and misinformation.
Right.
It's called Suspicious Observers.
Okay?
Oh yes, I know
I've been
them.
following it for 15 years, and I got into a Faraday cage 15 years ago because of what I knew about the sun.
Very
and its
good.
potential.
Very good.
It's a great
What,
website.
tell us the name again.
Suspicious Observers.
Colorado, right?
Suspicious
He's in
Observer.
Colorado.
Yes, yeah.
Very
yeah.
good. Thank
Yeah.
you.
That's a guy.
What happened with the Carrington event, again, 1859, we didn't have all the electronics we have. That night, telegraph communication around the world began to fail. There were reports of sparks showering from telegraph machines, shocking operators, and setting papers ablaze. All over the planet, colorful auroras illuminated the nighttime sky, glowing so brightly that the birds began to chirp and laborers started their daily chores, believing the sun had begun rising. Some thought the end of the world was at hand, but Carrington's naked eye had spotted the true cause of the bizarre happenings, a massive solar flare with the energy of 10 billion atomic bombs. The flare spewed electrical gas and subatomic particles towards Earth, and the resulting geomagnetic storm, dubbed the Carrington event, was the largest on record to have struck the planet. Okay, another thing is a solar flare, which is similar. An X-class solar flare erupted on the sun's surface in 2012, an event that is still much, much lower in brightness and total energy output than the Carrington event of 1859, but which could have still caused catastrophic geomagnetic storm if it had struck the Earth with the right or wrong properties. So, a solar flare, something starting at the sun, very little warning, 8 minutes to Earth to travel, can damage satellites, can knock out radio communication, and not very dangerous to us on Earth. Another thing is called a CME, a coronal mass ejection. This is from the sun again, a geomagnetic storm. In 1989, there was a geomagnetic storm. The whole province of Quebec went black for 92 minutes and lasted for 9 hours. From the geomagnetic storm triggered by a CME, coronal mass ejection. So this is what it looks like. I don't know if you can see it. It kind of looks like a laid down figure 8. So what are the risks of that? There is advanced warning. 18 hours to 5 days before it gets to Earth. Can take out power grids though, and electronics are not damaged, unlike an EMP. So here is NOAA's solar storm prediction model. Space weather experts at NASA and NOAA are warning that a solar storm could strike Earth. This was past in 2020. And this is just typical of how they would warn you. In addition to triggering aurora far from the poles, in other words, northern lights, a strong solar storm could also disrupt electrical generating systems, electric grid, satellite communication, and radio signals. The last time I remember them warning about this, the aircraft avoided flying up to Alaska, because when they go from Asia to the U.S., they go north by Alaska, because it's the trade winds makes it a faster trip. But if it's going to knock out your radio communications and satellite and GPS and everything, they want to stay away from that North Pole. Coronal mass ejection, or CME for short, that occurred in 2020 is responsible for this potential solar storm. NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center and the CME anticipated to arrive early that year. So what's the threat of an EMP? We know that if it's coming from the sun, you have a little bit of warning, or maybe 8 to 15 days. What about EMP? This gentleman's name is Roscoe Bartlett. He was senator for about 20 years, U.S. Senate, and he was on the Committee for Armed Services, Subcommittee of Tactical Air and Land Forces. He was the chairman, Subcommittee for Land Projection Forces, Committee on Science, Space, and Sea Power. He was one of 2 scientists at the Senate, and subcommittees Research and on Science, Education, and Energy and Environment, which is where this comes into play. In 2018, the Department of Homeland Security, together with the FBI, announced the Russian government hackers infiltrated critical infrastructure in the United States, including energy, nuclear, commercial facilities, water, aviation, and critical manufacturing. My personal opinion is, and I might be wrong, I think instead of an EMP, we're going to get a cyber attack on the grid. And I hope that's true, because then the microelectronics will still work. If you have, solar power and stuff like that, then you could still function. But if it's an EMP, you might lose all, our life as we know it would change very, very quickly. Went the wrong way, sorry. According to the DHS and FBI report, malicious Russian activities were ongoing since March 2016. Russian malware, that's software going into your systems, which have been sitting in control system of various U.S. utilities, allows the Russians to turn off power and sabotage the energy grid. And I think the Chinese have done it too. So all they have to do is flip a switch and everything will go down. It just isn't going to be an EMP, it'll just take the grid down. So most of us here have been working on how do we survive if the grid goes down. You have your alternative energy, you have generators and stuff like that. So if it's not an EMP, but it's a cyber attack, those things are going to work for you. If you have solar like I do, and there's an EMP, you're probably still in trouble, because you've got an inverter and a charge controller and things with microelectronics, and we'll talk about that in a second. So, our dependence on electricity, all conveniences, appliances and computers, all communication, phones and the internet, all modern transportation, because the fuel pumps aren't going to work, so you're not going to get far. I came from the other side of Highway 20, on the other side of the Cascades, about a tank of gas. Well, if all of a sudden nobody's pumping gas, am I going to get home? Because I have a half a tank of gas. It's that kind of thing. Water supply, even if you're not in the city. If you're out and you have a well and you don't have power, you're not going to get the water out of the well. So your ideal thing would be to have a creek also, or something. Food supply, there won't be any transportation to bring the food, so you have a garden, feed yourself. All purchases, cash registers won't work. All lighting, city and the county. Think about it. You live in the country, but you have a yard light. Well, now you don't have a yard light. Okay, so how do we get prepared for an EMP attack, or even a severe solar storm? Protecting most electronic appliances in your house against EMP, if they are plugged in and in use, is probably hopeless, unless your home has an effective Faraday cage, which most houses wouldn't be, and you have the power filters and fast surge suppressors on the incoming line. There's a company, and I think I have it on the slide, there's a company that makes a device that goes in your power panel where the grid comes in, or your alternative energy, and it's a great big breaker that is supposedly going to protect you from an EMP. My son-in-law is an electrical engineer. He designs the guts to taser guns for taser, and he works for Space Data, which does satellite communication stuff. And he said, you know, there's 3 kinds of EMP rays, gamma rays, and a couple others. And you know, that device will probably help 2 out of 3 of those, but it probably won't work for all of them. So even if you invest in this kind of a device, which I haven't put in yet, it may not guarantee that you're not going to lose everything that's wired into that. Notice if it's plugged in and in use. So if you have, what happens is the EMP is like lightning, like that one person said. It's an invisible blast of energy, and it's going to follow those power lines, and it's going to go to follow it to your house and go into your house and blow up whatever it can find. So if you have a device that's not plugged in and not turned on, it's possible that it won't hit it. If you have a car that is old enough that it doesn't have computer chips in it, we have a 1990 Honda Accord. Our motorhome is 1990. I have an old Isuzu diesel pickup. Those are EMP proof as far as I'm concerned, because they don't have computer chips and all that stuff. Okay, so here is, if you can see this picture, I bought this in Phoenix when Obama was president. This kind of event was a big deal. And in Phoenix at the state fairgrounds, they had a really big Prepper Fest. That's what it was called. Yeah, it was called Prepper Fest. And it was a whole convention center full of vendors and seminar speakers and stuff like this, but it was on a large scale. And one guy made these bags and he's selling them. It's made out of aluminum, has a self-closing lid, and it's made to put your laptop in it. And I think I have it in that can. I can show it to you. The guy that I'm helping put in his solar, he's building a property at Chenasket to be in the country, and he's actually putting in 80 panels of solar. He's going to have so much electricity, it's not even funny. But he said, look at what I got. This is it. We're driving down the road going to his place on Highway 2. He's got a Faraday bag that he bought online, and he said he tried different ones, and this is the only one that worked. It is SLNT, whatever that acronym means.
Silent.
That's the name of,
It's go
Silent?
It's go silent.
Go silent. Thank you. But this is the little Faraday bag that you put your cell phone in. And it really works, because when he put it in there, I would try to call him, and it would go directly to voicemail, because it couldn't find him. Which means an EMP is not going to get through there either.
Yeah. But you have to have your phone charged. That's the thing. If it's in that bag, because if you're charging it, you know, and you keep it in the bag and you keep your plug out.
Yeah,
it's not
exactly.
working.
If you plug it in, then you've compromised that bag. Yeah. Good point. Okay, here's this thing that you put on in your breaker panel, EMP shield, and it says somewhere on their site, it's $400 like, and somewhere on the site it says guaranteed. And I'm thinking, how is it guaranteed? There's an EMP, it doesn't work. What are you going to do? Sue them?
Yeah.
They'll be out of business. They'll be running to the hills. So, but if you want to try it. Now here's a big commercial Faraday cage.
EMP shield.
Oh, did you want the name?
I wasn't sure.
EMP shield. Yeah, EMP shield. This is a commercial Faraday cage. $4,000.
Wow.
And I don't know how big it is, but my guess it's about this big. Okay, by the picture.
So what would you put in there?
Well, we're going to talk about what to put in it.
Big enough for the wash.
Okay, now before I tell you about that can there, I want to just show you on and I have business cards there with the address, preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. We have over 300 videos we've made in the last 10 years about preparedness. And we just started one it's been about 6 months. We started it called Grid Down, and it has everything to do with EMPs and all that. So if you want to get, I don't know how many are in there, there's quite a few. And then urban dangers and the end of life as you know it. We have videos and we have podcasts. In that case, a podcast is audio, so you could download the file and play it in your car while you're driving, kind of thing. What can make the grid go down? And this is the Faraday cage. And we're going to do a physical hands-on thing, but I'm going to show you in slide form here. And these are, again, our videos, and this is a shortened version of these multiple videos. But how to build a Faraday cage using a garbage can, and what to put in the Faraday cage, okay? And so this is what it looks like. It's that one right there. And the way I found out about this was YouTube University. This guy said he's an engineer, and what he did is he took a garbage can and he put an AM radio in it, and he went next to an AM radio tower where it's broadcasting, and he thought if he could hear the radio, then it's not working. So he put it in there, put the lid on, he could still hear the radio. So then he said, well, okay, what am I going to do? So he insulated the inside, which you'll see it's in cardboard, and then he put a smaller garbage can inside and the lid and insulated it and everything, put the radio in, and he said he couldn't hear the radio. So that's where this idea came from, was that guy on YouTube. I have 4 of these because if my solar gets toasted, I've got an inverter that's that big. Well, it's not going to fit in there, so I made a backup buying a Chinese small one. Charge controllers are $800 a piece, Midnight Solars. I've got 3 of those in Faraday cages, because if they get toast, and I still need to get my solar going again. So anyway, this is what it looks like. Just quickly, and the debate online is, does it need to be grounded? And there's not consensus about whether it should be. So I didn't, but I grounded the lid to the can. So I have a copper wire, you can see there, so that it makes sure that it's connected. Now, what they say is buy a garbage can where the lid fits tight, and then I've got on the table some aluminum duct tape, and when I'm done with it, I seal that crack with the aluminum duct tape just to make a little extra. And actually, the guy that I'm helping with the solar, he came to my house and we tried, I told him about this and you should do this, and told him about the engineer that told how to do it, and he says, well, let's try it. So he got a radio and he stuck it in the can, and we put it all back together, and he could still hear it. I thought, what? All of this effort and he could still hear the radio? Come on! And it was even in a metal building in my shop. So that's why he had that thing for his phone. But anyway,
I'm sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead.
Is the can aluminum or steel?
Steel, galvanized steel. Yep.
No.
So my thing is, we don't know for sure how bad an EMP would actually do, but if you don't do anything, it's not gonna help. So I've got not only a garbage can, I've got another one inside of it. They're insulated from each other, and it's in a metal building. How much more can I do? And it's cheap. I mean, that's like $50. So here it is inside. I took cardboard and I cut it so that it made a liner, and I used duct tape, but I didn't ever have the duct tape touch the metal, because duct tape is conductive. And then here it is with by the way, this is a 31 gallon. That's your normal big garbage can, and it's $35. Okay. Then the little one amazingly fits perfect. I was so excited when I tried it the first time. It just fits just right, including the lid. $30. And then what I did, I also put a big plastic garbage bag in there to insulate, and then I put my components inside, wrap the plastic so it's not touching any metal, put the lid back on with cardboard in the lid, you can see that, and then put the other lid on with cardboard in between. So we'll take a look, do a hands-on thing in a minute, but let's think for a minute what goes in. You know, you're going to decide what you would put in a Faraday cage. And what you put in would depend whether you need 1 or 2, or in my case, I think I have 4. Radios, flashlights, that would be if they're electronic. If it's just a regular flashlight, it's not going to hurt it. Remember, microelectronics is what's the key. If the component doesn't have microelectronics, you really don't need a Faraday cage. Power generation equipment. So like, and I think maybe I show you, you can go to Harbor Freight and you can buy a little 3-panel, 100 watt panel kit with a little inverter and all that stuff for $2.99 or something like that. You can get some emergency small, and I take those components and put them in there, and the solar panels, it's not going to hurt them. Car repair parts, computer and drive. I have a computer and an external hard drive in there. Now think about it. If you're like me, you go on, you get YouTube, you find a thing. I have a Word document and it's talking about solar, and I'll have maybe 40 different links to go to YouTube videos that are on different subjects. Well, if you don't have internet and your computer died, you lost all of your library of stuff, all of it. But if you have it on a computer that's protected in the Faraday cage, and external hard drives aren't expensive. As a matter of fact, you can get a thumb drive now that's bigger than that external drive. Then you can put it in there, and then when the world falls apart, you can pull it out and be the only guy in town or gal in town that actually can look your YouTube videos up, because you, well, maybe not.
Yeah, where's the whole thing?
What I do is I use free YouTube downloader. And I download the actual movie onto my hard drive, not the link.
Yeah.
Okay.
But if there's an EMP, wouldn't it wipe out the actual use of like plugging in your house?
Oh,
Even
yeah.
if you pull your computer out, would it actually?
If you have the computer, this is a backup computer, it's an old one, and it's in the Faraday cage. If an EMP hit, it would kill this, it would kill everything plugged into the walls.
But it would also kill the grid itself, wouldn't it?
Yeah, it would. Oh, yeah. Yeah.
So it's
That-
a solar charged.
Roscoe
backup?
Bartlett, that senator guy, he said that there are, I think he said 13 major substations in the United States in the grid. And if an EMP took those devices down, we do not make them in the United States, and it takes 2 years to get them when there's not an EMP and the grid's down. So in other words, you're never going to have the grid back. If the grid goes down because of an EMP, it's gone forever. In
And
our
then
lifetime,
you wouldn't
anyway.
be able to use your electronics that are in.
Unless you have generator, like solar power generator.
Yeah.
You
So
say-
that's battery powered, and I have the power supply in there, and then I could go with my alternative energy.
No internet.
You know,
Only downloads.
right? No internet, that would be gone.
It won't fry your panels? You said it won't fry the solar
My son-in-law, who's an electrical engineer, says the panels will be fine.
Yeah, the panels are just contactors. Those aren't going to get taken out by a high frequency short.
The only difference might be there are AC solar panels. I don't even know if they make them anymore, but they have a little micro inverter on the panel. So then it's coming off with AC. It's already converted. Those will get toast. But a normal solar panel that you buy should be
Your
fine.
generators will be toast because.
Well, you won't be able to get gas.
Well, yeah, that's what
Yeah.
they'll be toast, and you won't be able to get.
You
gas.
really want to have solar or hydro or something like that, because and we have video. We have a video on hydro. We have a video on ram pumps. All that stuff's on the website.
I have an EMP proof generator, but if
you
can
can't get
fuel for
gas,
it,
yeah, right.
it's big diesel.
Cordless tools, compact fluorescent lights. It's just to have some spares because they've got electronics in them. A clock, digital camera, voltmeter, DVD player, and MP3 player. Well, why would you bother with that? Well, guess what? If the world stops and for months you have nothing going, it might be nice to have a little bit of music or some entertainment. So that's why those people suggest that. Let's see, we already did that. Which of these could you live without? Probably be in trouble. On our website we have a seminar called Living Without Electricity. So one alternative is to have have a plan in place if you don't get electricity from the grid, all your electronics is gone, and you don't have the generator because you can't get fuel, and your solar stuff got toasted because you didn't have spares. You can live without electricity. We're just not used to it. And we might not be prepared for that lifestyle if we haven't thought about it. So that video is a good one to watch. Okay, before we do the hands-on deal, I wanted to show you the different major categories of videos on our website. Live seminars, this one will end up there. Country living, moving in the country. My fellow contributor Andrew Rice is going to do one, I think in this very tent, 2 sessions from now on how to find country property. Sustainable gardening, homestead remedies. Grid down, I talked to you about that. Wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy. Because if the hospitals are shut down and somebody's sick, what are you going to do? So we have a whole bunch of stuff on natural remedies and hydrotherapy, and then some sections on spiritual concepts. The Bible predicts in Daniel 12 there's going to be a time of trouble like has never been and never will be again. Just let that soak in. So we go in depth trying to understand what that will be and even how long it would last. Because when I've done live seminars on a spiritual kind of audience and we go in depth into those Bible study things on that, inevitably during question and answers people say, how long do you think this will be? You know, and just to recap, there are 3 times of trouble predicted in the Bible. The first one is Mark of the Beast. You heard of that? 666. Can't buy or sell. Life's still normal, but it's complicated. And then it's too late, and the plagues start coming. There's 7 last plagues. You might have heard of that. And then there's a death decree in the Bible for those that don't comply. People like us that say, "No, government, I'm not doing what you're saying." We'll be marked people, and there'll be a death decree. And so, the question is, for what we're thinking about, when you're trying to be self-sustaining when times are hard, how long would that be if the Bible prophecy that says there's going to be this mark of the beast and you can't buy or sell, how long would that be? How long can you go without buying anything or selling anything? That's a pretty serious question. And anyway, that's in there, and I find that very, very intriguing. And before we do that, one encouraging thing from the Bible, 2 Timothy 1:7 says, "For God has not given us the spirit of fear, but of power and of love and of a sound mind." We don't have to be afraid, but that doesn't mean we stick our head in the sand and do nothing. So that's, now let's do a hands-on demonstration. I'm going to show you what happens to be in here, and I haven't looked in here in probably 2 years, so we'll play Christmas here.
Find
Now,
your grandchild.
yeah, right. Now I tried to get this aluminum tape off. It's really strong, but there it is. Okay, and feel free to, if you want to come around, but maybe don't block the camera, or I can just do it. So there's the cardboard, and it's just a homemade deal. And here's the lid of the 20-gallon, and here's the cardboard that fits in the lid of the 20-gallon. So we've got 2 lids, and I chose to wire it with copper wire, probably not guaranteed to be necessary. So we have 2 lids, 2 cardboard liners to insulate it from the items, and then the 20-gallon can, which miraculously fits perfect. So here we go, Christmas. This is an external hard drive for the laptop, and again, with today's technology, you can buy a 1 gig or a 2 gig thumb drive. You don't even need something that big. Voltmeter from Harbor Freight, used to be free. They don't give stuff away anymore since COVID. This is a Geiger counter in case we have a nuclear attack. Motorola radios, and these are to keep track with each other, right? And they're CB and they're ham. I don't know if it's ham, so it's like CB, but this This is a Bofang radio. They're really cheap. They are weather. They are emergency stuff. They are, you can listen to FM. You can communicate with each other, probably longer distance than that. And this was like 30 bucks.
What was the name of that one?
Bofang. B-A-O-F-E-N-G. B-A-O-F-E-N-G.
They're all over Amazon.
They're all over. Yeah, they're cheap. They're all made in China, of course, but they're cheap. And they're really full featured. You can program it to say, I want to listen to that frequency. That's my local, you know, weather, whatever. What is this? Ah, little flashlight. Rechargeable. Okay, that would be good. Because if you have batteries and they're not rechargeable and the flashlight goes dead. All right, what's this? Like I say, I haven't looked in here in probably years. Oh, Harbor Freight solar. So you buy their solar panels, and this is a charge controller to charge the batteries. Okay, cheap. You know, this whole kind of setup, you'll charge your cell phone and your and little stuff. You're not going to run your house with it. And this came with this kit from Harbor Freight. Came with some compact fluorescent lights. So this is the Harbor Freight setup right here. Clamps to hook onto your battery. Different kind of connectors for charging stuff. This is a light socket to plug into that, so you can have some light. So we'll leave that for a moment. Here's the laptop and the Faraday bag, which only works if you have it closed, and it wasn't. So there's my old Sony laptop with the power supply. And then I'd plug in the external hard drive, which could have all the YouTube videos on it. Another Harbor Freight cheap thing. This is a battery charger that has a solar panel on it. Kind of cool. But there again, it's not going to do a lot. It'll do AA, AAA, C, D, and 9-volt batteries. I'm pretty sure it has a solar. Yeah, solar. Here's a power inverter for being able to change your battery 12-volt DC to AC, so you could run a little TV or whatever. Not that the TV is going to do you any good. And some rechargeable batteries. If they're not going to be rechargeable, they're probably not going to last long. Rechargeable batteries that this other device charges off the sun, and some little cheapy freebie flashlights. And that particular one is empty. I have two of them that have my backups for my solar equipment, the charge controllers, and two charge controllers fit in one, and the inverter fit in another. One of the devices was too tall, so I had to take a second can and make it taller, cut the bottom out of it. To be aware of new videos like this one, be sure to subscribe to the Preparing for the Time of Trouble channel. For more free videos and downloadable audio podcasts, as well as handouts, go to www.preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com. Topic categories include recordings of live seminar presentations, country living, sustainable gardening, homestead remedies, how to be self-sufficient when the grid goes down, wild edible and medicinal plants, hydrotherapy, and end-time Bible prophecies. To take advantage of these free resources, go to preparingforthetimeoftrouble.com.